All right, so I've said in prior videos that I'm a vinyl collector and not an equipment guy. And that description kind of becomes a little bit problematic when you consider that 2 weeks ago I bought 4 McIntosh amplifiers. So over the course of this video, I want to talk to you a little bit about how I came across 4 McIntosh amplifiers to buy, talk a little bit about my consideration set with which ones I'm keeping, a couple of differences between these units, and yeah, we'll see if that makes for something that's coherent and interesting. Before we get started, I guess a couple of things. One is I'm repping Burlington Records shirt. I don't live in Vermont. I live in Georgia, but anyway, I like some of these, like wearing some of these record store shirts around town. Also, before we really get into it, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell. That way you get notified every time I post a video. So my relationship with McIntosh equipment really only started maybe a couple of years ago, and that was when I found an MC2105 amplifier and a C26 preamp on Facebook Marketplace. These things in the picture were actually upside down. The equipment was actually hanging out of the cabinets. They didn't look in good shape. The sort of black faceplate on them was pretty marred up. And apparently they didn't even, well, actually they powered on, but they didn't actually produce any sound. So when I went and picked up these units, it was at a gas station off of I-75 outside of Atlanta. Guy pulled up in a landscaping truck and in the bed had these units and basically handed them to me. I gave him some money and that was that. And fortunately, I have a guy locally who can fix these things, and he does so pretty cheaply. And so I was able to fix, or at least get in full working order, the 2105 and the C26 for about $300. It was a good deal, and I've been using these two units. In fact, this is them right here, right? The 2105 and the C26. Been using them for a couple of years now with absolutely no issues, and I absolutely love these units. So that was my first sort of entry point into McIntosh. Previously, I was using a Marantz 2270. It's also a solid state receiver, or sort of integrated unit, right? Even has the preamp built in, unlike these units. And I didn't really know that I needed anything better than that 2270. It was a great unit. I actually still have it. I still haven't managed to part ways with it just because it looks so beautiful. I really do need to sell it, especially with all these new amplifiers that I had coming in. But as soon as I heard the difference with the Mac gear versus the Marantz, it was clear to me that I needed to use, or I needed to move forward with the McIntosh stuff. Also, let's be real. Anytime you're talking about McIntosh gear, and this is especially relevant for this video based on what I'm going to talk about, there is a lot of appeal in these sort of bluish greenish, right, faceplates or dials and meters and stuff, right, on these units. And I'm sure there's a psychological effect to that as well. But like I said, I did notice a sonic difference. It sounds better. It makes the jazz records that I listen to sound better in this room. And so, yeah, it was an easy decision. So, so why then would I seek out additional gear? Well, guess what? I wasn't seeking it out. So I have a buddy who got a tip that there was somebody outside of Atlanta who was trying to sell a, quote, garage full of equipment. Now, all we had to work on was a couple of pictures that we were sent, and in those pictures, and I'm going to show a few of them to you, what you see is a bunch of McIntosh boxes that are actually pictured there. So that was more than enough to pique our interest, to get us driving out there to go check out what was in the garage. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that trip, which ended up yielding 3 different amplifiers. And then very coincidentally, just 2 days later, I was at an antique store, came across another McIntosh amplifier for a very inexpensive price. And so by the end of the weekend, yeah, I had 4 new McIntosh amplifiers, and my back hurt a little bit because these things are really, really heavy. So let's kind of dive into some of that story. All right, so when me and my buddy hit the road to check out this guy's garage, it was about 30 minutes away, maybe 45 minutes away outside of Atlanta, and we didn't necessarily go into it thinking that it was going to amount to much. I mean, we did see some of those pictures that clearly showed that there was some Mac gear there, but we hadn't seen any pictures of any actual units, just the boxes. But where there's boxes, there's equipment, right? So when we showed up and we saw what, again, quote unquote, was a garage full of equipment, it literally was a garage full of equipment. It was probably stacked from the floor up into, not a very tall person, but it was higher than me, probably 6 feet. And it covered at least, I would say at least half of the double of the 2-bay garage. So there was just a ton of equipment. And what was a little bit problematic early on was that we started opening boxes, and what it said on the outside of the box was not what was inside, by and large. And why that's a problem is because we basically had to go through everything. And everything meant, yes, a lot of vintage gear, but it also meant a lot of more modern, and I would actually say pretty high-end surround sound type of setup, surround sound equipment. And there was a lot of value in that gear, but we weren't really in the market for that type of stuff. I mean, maybe we could have flipped it, but we wouldn't have really known what to do with it, where to find the buyer, how to service it if it needed to be serviced, etc. So we weren't interested in any of the modern stuff. We were only interested in vintage. And like I said, we're looking for McIntosh because of all those Mac boxes. And so, I've showed at least a quick picture up front, but some of those boxes you can kind of see, and again, what was a little bit problematic is the mislabeling, right? So there was like a C26 box, but inside was not a C26 preamplifier. There were boxes that were described as having amplifiers inside and ended up only having the walnut cases, like empty walnut cases. And then there was blank boxes that ended up actually having receivers, or amplifiers in them. And so it was just a little bit of a task to go through everything. Plus the fact that some of these amplifiers are 60 to 80 pounds a piece. And so the fact that they were stacked up on top of each other and up high just became very difficult to kind of go through everything. But obviously, what else were we going to do? Obviously, we're going to go through all of it that we could to figure out what might be there. All right, so fortunately, my buddy who I went with is very sort of well versed in this hobby, especially in terms of equipment, and he brought everything that he needed in order to test whatever equipment that we found. Right, so he had the cables that he needed. He brought some speakers that he didn't really care about if we blew, if there was a problem with one of the amplifiers. He had a cable to like hook up to his phone so that we could at least preview some of this stuff. He even brought a preamp. Just a little miniature preamp in case we came across some amplifiers and we really wanted to test them out. So we had everything that we needed on hand. Fortunately, the guy who was getting rid of everything, I believe there was a death in the family, and he was trying to liquidate a lot of the equipment. Fortunately, he didn't mind that we were testing things out. In fact, in some ways, it almost felt like we were showing him, "Hey, this works, this doesn't," and that was kind of helpful for him as well, because he didn't have the ability to test the stuff on his own. Let me tell you about what we came away with, and just get that over with. So first of all, what we came away with was a McIntosh 2205, and that is this unit right here that has been probably in the background of some of my recent videos. I've been testing it, and I need to go and do a little bit more A/B, kind of go back and forth. I don't know that I'm going to be able to hear anything different. We'll see, because if I don't, then it'll just come down to the looks. But obviously this one's more powerful, but I'll get into that in just a second. So we came away with a 2205. Now he also had 3 2200 units, McIntosh 2200 amplifiers. We tested all 3. One of them, one channel didn't work, and we left it behind. We could have gotten it probably cheaply, had it serviced probably inexpensively, and ended up making it work. But here's the thing, we're not made of money. We're trying to prioritize where we spend, and especially because we're trying to flip some of these units, right? I don't need to own 4 amplifiers. And so, yeah, in this case, I was trying to get the 2205 to do some A/B, figure out which one I should keep, but the 2200 units we were just going to flip outright. The other 2 ones worked perfectly, except for a couple of bulbs that were out, and so we're going through the process of trying to fix that ourselves, but otherwise fully functioning units. So that is what we came away with, 2 2200s and a 2205. We did expect to find preamplifiers and did not. We did find some FM tuners by McIntosh that also have the beautiful meters and everything, and I'm really kicking myself we left those behind, thinking that well, you know, obviously they don't go for as much, and also people just generally have less need for like FM tuner components. However, there's a lot of people who love Mac gear and want the full setup on their shelves, even just for the look of it, I think, right? Because who's listening? I don't know who's listening to the radio, or who needs to spend so much money on a McIntosh FM tuner when you could just, you know, you could just hook it up to, I don't know, your phone or something and get radio off that. So anyway, we did leave those behind. I am kicking myself. I don't know how much we might have had to pay to get those in, but it probably would have been a little bit more difficult to flip. So I'm fine. Again, we had to prioritize our money. So that is what came out of that garage. Now, like I said, we expected there to be a lot more. There's a lot of empty walnut cases that belong to McIntosh units, and those McIntosh units weren't there. It's possible that the guy had gotten rid of them. It's possible that they were somewhere else. But in any event, it was a very successful trip. And at the end of the day, we're going to have the two 2200s to flip, and either this 2205 that we got or my 2105 that I had previously. So hopefully that is going to result in some decent cash that I can put towards records or something. All right, so you've heard about how I came across 3 of the amps, the 4th amp. All right, so those 3 amps were on a Friday after work. The 4th amp I came across randomly at an antique store on that Sunday, so just 2 days later. I was not looking to buy additional equipment. I just dropped some money on these other units. Obviously, I was going to try to turn them and make some money, and I'm always looking for that kind of stuff, right? Like I went to this antique store specifically looking for records, and I got some records. But I also got this amp. So on the shelf at this antique store, they had a McIntosh 2100 power amplifier, and it was inexpensive. Okay, so it was $375. I didn't tell you how much the other ones cost, but I'll tell you how much this one cost. It was $375 on sale. And so you know, it was marked down or whatever on sale. I mean, it's an antique store, but it was marked down. The guy who was selling it had tested it and kind of like did this like write up. Apparently he opened the thing and like he wasn't replacing anything, but he opened it, cleaned it, tested it, and kind of had some notes written down about, you know, what he thought. Basically, there's a little bit of rust on the exterior case, but no rust on the inside. And that's rust is pretty common. Pitting, right, is pretty common on some of these units that are like sort of the stainless steel on the outside. But otherwise fully functioning. And for $375, you know, as long as I don't take it home and immediately blow my speakers, I think that that's probably an easy buck, right? Even if I don't have it serviced. Now I may have it serviced before I sell it, but I did buy this one to sell it. That is for certain, because again, I don't need another unit, and I listen to music a little bit with my eyes, and I love these meters. and I'll kind of show you more about why that is important for this discussion. In fact, if you're familiar with McIntosh gear, I think you know where I'm headed with this thing. The fact that I have two 2200s, a 2205, a 2100, and a 2105. The spoiler here is that those are actually only 2 amps, two different kinds of amps. And so that's kind of where I want to take this. I mean, so obviously I bought that 2100 and I took it home and I was like, all right, now I guess I'm in the used equipment game, especially with my 2270 Marantz. And so, yeah, I decided though that I needed to get a little bit smart about the differences between some of these units and probably get a little bit comfortable hooking them up repeatedly, so that if anybody comes over and wants to demo something, I can actually show them that it operates as it should. All right, so let's start off with some of the stats on the 2100. Let's start there. So you know, take a look at this thing, and obviously this thing is a beast. It is a hulking amplifier. It weighs 65 pounds. This thing looks like it was perhaps designed in the Cold War era, and guess what it was? It's a mid-70s unit, and there's nothing really that pretty about this thing, perhaps except the McIntosh logo, and I don't know, maybe the cage, but I don't know. Whenever I see cages, I want to see tubes behind them that are glowing, and obviously this is not a tube amplifier. This is solid state. So some of the stats on this thing are that it is 105 watts per channel into 8 ohms, that's in stereo, signal to noise ratio of 90 decibels, and an input sensitivity of 0.5 volts. And like I said, this thing is a heavy machine. It was not designed for looks. It was designed for, you know, I guess what it can do. And so, yeah, I mean, you know, again, obviously this thing caught my eye because of what it is, and obviously because of the price, and it was an easy decision to take it home. Now, if you compare this to my McIntosh 2105, and this is the one that I bought on Facebook Marketplace that I've been using for several years now. I've been very happy with it. The first thing that you'll note is that it is a much more beautiful amplifier, obviously depending on what you're interested in, but this doesn't have that kind of Cold War feel, right? It's you know, the black faceplate with a sort of turquoise or teal even meters. The switches look nicer. It's just overall a much better presentation. And guess what? It has lights that come on when you turn the thing on. And you know, like I said, you know, to some degree you can kind of listen with your eyes as well as your ears. And this is a beautiful unit. It looks really good on the shelf. And frankly, the 2100 would not look as good. So why do I talk about that? Well, it's because these two are the same amplifier. So there's no difference internally between the 2100 and the 2105, especially in terms of the stats, right? So a little bit different sizes. I'm not saying that that you could fit the entire 2100 into the 2105, but these really are the same. They're the same gear. It's the same unit, has the same specs, and they're essentially the same. And so what you're getting with the sort of quote unquote upgrade to the 2105 is what you get visually with this thing. And so, you know, for me, if the only difference between these two units is the visuals, then obviously I'm going to choose the 2105 because it has everything the 2100 does, but more. All right, so we have a little bit of a similar story between the 2200 and the 2205. So let's start with that 2200. So this is another solid state amplifier sold from 1975 to 1979. Instead of that 105 watts per channel, this one is 200 watts per channel into 8 ohms, and that's in stereo. The signal to noise ratio here is 95 decibels compared to 90 on the 2100 unit. The input sensitivity is 0.75 volts compared to 0.5. And this thing has 20 pounds more weight in it. And if I was a little bit better with equipment, I could tell you why that more watts per channel means heavier. But I can't. And in any way, in this case, it equates to 20 pounds of more stuff inside. So the other thing that this unit, I suppose, is famous for is the power guard system. And I believe that was some sort of like protection against the gear for when you like really turn it up loud. I think. I don't know that much about it. Something tells me listening to instrumental jazz, I'm never going to have to test it. So when you look at this 2200 unit, what you'll see is perhaps something that's a little bit more in between. It doesn't look quite as industrial as that 2100 unit. There's a little bit more of sort of visual components to it with sort of the brushed stainless steel faceplate. It does have some lights that go on, although obviously I mentioned that there were some issues with some of the bulbs coming on that we're in the process of fixing, but it does at least have some lights to let you know that when you turn it on, it's on. And so, yeah, not quite as industrial. Now, as we move to the 2105 unit, so this is another situation. So similar to the 2105 versus the 2100, the 2205 and the 2200 unit, I believe, are the exact same. They have the same specs. I think it's the same innards between these two items. And again, the biggest difference here is the presentation. Now, those 2200 units do go into a walnut casing, whereas the 2100 didn't. But what you get with the 2105 is the black faceplate. You get a little bit more of the sort of the chrome or sort of steel accents on it that the 2105 didn't have. You also get those teal or turquoisey kind of dials, which is nice, and you get plenty of additional lights. Now, even on this 2205. There's a few bulbs that are out, and I'm going to try to troubleshoot that as well, just to make sure that this is in fully working order, especially if I decide to keep it. All right, so for me, and for the reasons that I mentioned, it's just out of the question that I would keep either the 2100 or the 2200 units, right? Because there's two of those. And the reason why is because if it's the same innards, if they operate the same, and really the only difference is the exterior, then I want the one with the better exterior, right? The better packaging. And so for me, the question here is not out of all four which to keep, it's whether I should replace my 2105 with the 2205. And you know, here's the thing, because I'm not an equipment person, I do think a lot about the visual element here. And I know that that's stupid, or it's not stupid. Everybody has different things that they're interested in. I will say that if the only difference, or sorry, if the 2105 sounded better, then I would keep it independent of the visual difference. And why this is problematic is because I think that the 2205 sounds better. Now, that may be obvious because of the sort of more watts per channel or the increased sensitivity, which means I suppose that it's driving the speakers better, and these KEF LS50s are not exactly the most efficient speaker. But yeah, I do think that it sounds different. Now, I haven't done enough going back and forth A/B testing, and the reason why is because the damn speaker wire inputs on these things are so tiny, and these days, everyone, me included, has much thicker gauge, or you know, or really lower gauge speaker wire, and so it's borderline impossible to like take it in and out of these things without doing a lot of twisting and like getting the little copper fibers in my fingers and giving me splinters and all that kind of garbage. And so I know what I need is I need like banana plugs, and I need like, you know, spades and all. I know I need all that stuff, and I don't have it right now. Or I need just lower gauge wire speaker cables because why do I need really thick wires when you consider what I'm using them for? But that's another discussion, because I know there's a lot of cable people out there. But anyway, it's a little bit cumbersome to go back and forth. I wish I could just toggle back and forth with a switch. I'm not that sophisticated with my setup, so I'm not doing that. So I am having to like unplug speaker cables and like, you know, switch it all out. And so then it becomes a little bit problematic. I almost need a third party in the room, or really just a second person, to do it for me and not tell me which one is hooked up so that I can really do a full assessment. But at first glance, or first listen, it really does sound like the 2205 sounds a little bit better. I'm going to go back to the 2105 and figure out if I'm missing anything, but I think the 2205 sounds better. So that's probably what I should keep. Except when you look at the C26 preamp and the 2105, the dials match. The meters match. These two units really belong together. They were probably like sold together. They were probably like, you know, released at the same time and what have you. And I know you can swap in and out things, but it really feels like these two things belong together. The 2205 has different visual components to it, or elements. I don't mean components. The meters are different size. I like that they're bigger on the 2205. It has the steel or the kind of chrome box on it, which I really don't like. I feel like it interrupts the continuity of the black faceplate. The actual knobs on it are black in the middle instead of that brushed stainless steel or brushed aluminum or whatever, and I really like the brushed look. So, you know, from a visual standpoint, the 2205, for me, doesn't look as good, but I think it sounds better. So, that's a little bit of my dilemma. That's kind of where we're at. And like I said, I'm going to go back and forth and do a little bit of a sonic comparison again, probably post some sort of update, although probably not a full video. Maybe I'll mention it in my next video, which one I ended up with. Or maybe I'll do another video once I sell these 4 units and tell you about whether it was a good investment or not. But I guess I'm going to kind of leave it at that, and I'll say a couple of things. So one is that I know people are going to say, why does it sound better? The sound feels like it's more in your face. It feels like it's more like, I don't know, compelling, if that's even like an accurate descriptor. It just feels like there's more presence with the music. I don't know, it's just hard to say, right? It's hard to say what color an amplifier can really add to music. And it's just difficult because, you know, me knowing which one is that I'm running the music through is going to kind of have this impact in the back of my head as well. and the newness of the 2205. Do I prefer it because it's new? So, you know, it's a little bit problematic, but I am interested in feedback, especially from many of you folks who maybe have McIntosh gear or one of these units. I know there's going to be plenty of people that'll tell me to look out for the tube gear instead, or point me to a different direction entirely, or maybe even to modern Mac gear, because I know that stuff sounds better. But I'm just a vintage kind of person, and I generally don't spend a lot on equipment, and this is what I got, right? I came across these units, and I'm trying to choose the best of them to, you know, make sure that I have the best listening experience. And I'm not unhappy with what I have. And so if I just stick with what I have, I'm sure I'd be perfectly happy. But this is just sort of some of my thought process. So let me know what you think. Let me know which way I should go. And yeah, and like I said, I'll post a video. I'll commit to that. I'll post a video and let you know how the sale of these things went, which one I chose, etc. When all that goes down. And believe me, I need the money at this point after having everything tied up in these units. So I'm going to be trying to sell these in pretty short order here locally, because they're so dang heavy, and I'm not shipping these things. I'm just not shipping them. So anyway, that's where we're at. Thanks for sticking with me. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe. Can't say I'm going to have a whole lot more equipment videos coming out, but who knows? I am shopping for a turntable this year, so we'll see what happens. But anyway, thanks, and I'll see you next time.